go to Eastern Europe and visit a few cities there. Ended up in Krakow, where my mother's family comes from. This is the Muzeum Lotnictwa Polskiego w Krakowie, which is the Polish Aviation Museum in Krakow. A lot of people, like I said, don't know about this museum. It's located outside the city in a former Polish Air Force base that has roots back to the founding of the Polish Republic in 1919. And let me go into a little history for those who aren't familiar with it. So why Poland? Why would Poland have this collection? During the First World War, Poland as a political entity didn't exist. 140 years before, the Austro-Hungarian, the Russian, and the Prussian, later German empires had partitioned it and incorporated it into their own territory. So even though a lot of the Eastern Front battles were fought on what was Polish territory, it didn't exist as a country. The Germans, especially, had used Polish territory, which they considered Eastern Prussia and among other regions. They had a large air depot in Krakow, and when they pulled out at the end of the war, they left over 100 airframes in various states of repair and disrepair there. And that was the foundation of the Polish Air Force when the country declared its independence. And so the Polish Air Force flew German aircraft mainly at their founding. That was one reason there's German aircraft in Poland. The second one is the Second World War. The Germans had a national collection, of course. They moved it east to get away from Allied bombers, and when the Russians came through, they basically left it there, and the Polish said, well, it's ours now. So a lot of this came from the German national collection, straight from World War I. So, we'll start here. Whoops. All right, please. Go back to the museum of I'm sure we want on that. Okay. First aircraft, Sopwith Camel. With our recent acquisition here at the museum, it's kind of interesting. I had never really compared the two. This actually has a history I think competes with ours. It was built by one of the subcontractors, Clayton and Shuttleworth Works in Lincoln. In March of 18, it went to the first squadron of the RNAS, which became 201 Squadron, RAF, in April 18. It was flown by Flying Officer J.H. Foreman, who shot down 2 German aircraft. Apparently it was damaged, it was repaired, went to 210 RF Squadron. And between 16 June and 5 September, Flight Lieutenant H.A. Patey shot down 9 more planes with this aircraft. It was damaged and landed near the front lines. The Germans captured it, and that's why it's there now. It was part of the German collection that was left there after World War II. And I have more on all these, but I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it because I have to move quickly. Interesting. Russian aircraft, Grigorovich M15. It's the Polish spelling of that. And I apologize because in 2014, they gathered all their World War I aircraft into a new gallery for the centennial. And it's somewhat small, a little dark, and crowded and cramped. And it's hard to get really good pictures of some of these things. But they did a really interesting job of displaying them, like they did the water effect on this one. This Grigorovich was built in 1917, was assigned to a fortress flight on an island outside Riga Bay. These islands were captured by the Germans in Operation Albion in October 1917. And so this was one of the first aircraft to be in the newly formed museum in 1964. It was one of the most complete ones at that time, although it has been under restoration.
Was that a Curtiss flying boat or Curtiss or variant on the mural?
Oh, on the mural? I don't know. Yeah, it does kind of.
It looks like a Curtiss or Felix Hotel.
Yeah,
with Russian
it's
markings.
a Russian flying boat of some sort or other.
It might be
Oh, it's
one
Russian
that's there.
markings, but I mean the tail looks like.
Well, if you look at the tail of the aircraft there, it looks like it could.
It looks like a flying Grig 15, that's all.
Okay. Halberstadt CL2. This was also on the Germans left it there. This is supposedly the personal aircraft of the CNC of the German aviation General von Hübner. I'm not sure how they determined that, but it was part of the German aviation collection, so it's probably possible. And it's in, a lot of these airplanes don't have their wings on, they exist, but I think the space was a little cramped. You can see it's got this interesting camouflage on it, and there's a little cutout of the general there. And a lot of these are one of a kind in the world, of course. LVG B2. This is an interesting display because they did almost like a factory where they're installing the engine, and it's not fully, I guess I don't have a whole lot on that one, but the engine's on a crane. It was built in 1917 by Schutelance Works. Again, the only type of this in the world left.
Chris,
Yeah.
my experience with Polish museums is they don't expect you to speak Polish, and most of them usually have pretty good English songs.
Yeah.
That doesn't look to be the case here.
Some did and some didn't. Yeah, it was, in this section, I think it was a little, most of the signs seemed to be in Polish, unless I just took the Polish version, but I don't think I would have.
Yeah.
The Aviatik C3. Again, built in 1917, only survivor. They discovered during restoration had the remains of a radio installed, which is interesting. This one's actually
Is that another
shape.
frame of this thing? No.
LG Roland D6. This supposedly took part in the fighter competition at Adlershof in 1918. Again, I apologize, it's a really dark picture on this one. So I take lots of detailed shots. DFW C5. Built in 1917 at Aviatik, and unfortunately this is really bad.
It's a night fighter.
I should have liked this one. This is the worst one, I apologize.
Well, imagine,
There's a better picture on the website.
well, imagine our CL4, but with a two-bay wing.
Yeah, okay. And again, very dark, you can see that parabellum back there. Albatross C1, built in 1915, third production batch. Served with the Officers' School Detachment of the Radio Operator School in Warsaw. Fortunately, the buildings, most of the buildings are repurposed from the air base. If you like MiGs, you go outside here and they got, I think, every MiG model ever made lined up on the airfield. Unfortunately, the aircraft I went to see, the only remaining PZL P-11 was somewhere being worked on. Albatross B-2. This one supposedly was built in 1919. Yeah, this one had an English label. This was in a different part of the museum because it's in Polish Air Force markings. Actually flew until 1940.
Well, that thing was built in 1919. By that time, it was totally in the, its purpose was strictly trainer.
Right, right. Yeah, it was,
It must have been pretty good at it for them to still have it in production that late.
right. This was restored actually in Germany. They have their eye observation of the squadron symbol there. Okay, and then this one last aircraft-related thing, Zeppelin stock, and it's just the engine nacelle. And they've got it cut away so you can see the engine there. It's kind of interesting. And it's really dark in that part.
Damn, when are they gonna fully assemble that one?
I don't know if they have the rest of it. It's just interesting to see the piping and everything. Okay, one thing I kind of didn't expect is walking into one of the other buildings is their engine collection. They have an amazing engine collection. Almost every variant you can think of. And these labels were in both English and Polish. Benz BZ4D, there's the engine. And they're just in this building with nobody in there. And you can kind of walk around and take pictures in the back if nobody's looking. There wasn't anybody. Mercedes, 1960. Mercedes 415. 3. Australia. Samson. So they're both allied because once they kind of run through the German aircraft wore them out. They were close with France, and a lot of the 20s and 30s were collaboration with French and French aircraft. So that's just a sample on a Clerget and an unidentified one. In the World War I section, they also had memorabilia and uniforms. Some of these I think are, they didn't, unless it was written in the Polish, I couldn't really tell, but some of them seemed probably replicas, but
Well, that's
Russian.
that's the EVK, and that's probably one of
That's
the.
obviously an actual piece of fabric. I don't know what it says, but. It appears to be an original uniform, but I'm not sure why. Yeah, I didn't really delve into the labels. The Turkish uniforms look like reproductions. Don't know about the insignia. Some original German flying pants, and in this case looked like it had a lot. Looks like a reproduction. They had this souvenir from Lieutenant von Adam, which I think is original. Austro-Hungarian insignia looks original. The uniforms, not so sure. So all Polish personnel served in the armies of all these countries. So French flying jacket. So to finish it off, we flew into and out of Munich and went to the Deutsches Museum in Munich and had made a mistake. I meant to go to the one where all the aircraft are, which is outside Munich. Last time I was there, they were in one place. But saw some neat stuff there, and I'll just finish up with this one, this Rumpler C4. That was the label. There were some earlier aircraft. This is the only original World War I. And it's as a, it's kind of, you can see the innards there. And a fake kind of triplane in the background.
In factory red.
Yeah, factory red. Interesting, they have the wing covered clear there so you can see the innards. Okay, that's it.